What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Damn, homie. In high school, you was a man, homie. What the happened to you? I got the sickest vendetta when it comes to the cheddar. Golden Boy Promotions are currently scrambling, in my opinion, I think that's a good word for it, to find a card, an undercard, for a fight that most boxing fans didn't really request, and that's Canelo High Horse Born Ready versus Liam Smith. Now, I'm going to break it down in this video, give my thoughts, and just give you guys an update on the card. Now, the major problem that I see is this, and this will be a testament to kind of the struggles that Golden Boy are going through. And I've said this for a while, with HBO, with their budget cuts, they're going to the pay-per-view route, right? And I'm not necessarily opposed to pay-per-view because that's the way of the world. I've paid pay-per-view for pretty much all the fights. I really, up until like Pacquiao, when Pacquiao started fighting like guys like Chris Algieri, but before that, I really purchased, me or my brother, every Pacquiao fight, right? Every Floyd fight, every De La Hoya fight, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's the way of the world. But the problem is, now that you are getting PBC, right, the PBC model, Premier Boxing Champs, you're getting fights on free TV. And you can say what you want, but there's some damn good fights on there, right? Even little fights like Funfara versus Joe Smith Jr., that was a one-rounder. You didn't have to sit and watch 12 rounds of this or that. You got to see an immediate knockout where the champion, or the champion level fighter, I guess you could say, the favorite, was upset, right? Beyond that, you have bigger fights like Adonis Stevenson versus Thomas Williams Jr., which was a barn burner while it lasted, where the champion retained his title. Even bigger than that, you have Thurman versus Porter, which in my opinion is the fight of the year. Then you had Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, another fight of the year candidate on free TV. So it's becoming harder and harder to justify pay-per-view unless it's a fight we really want to see. Canelo Triple G, if they were to fight, clearly that would be a pay-per-view event. It'd be big, right? So based on whatever your main event is, this is, to me, this would be more of my formula. Whatever your main event is, that's going to determine how much you have to load the undercard. If you have Canelo Triple G, it would be nice to have a loaded undercard, but that's going to sell regardless. But if you have a main event like Canelo Liam Smith that the boxing world didn't really ask for, then to tell people why they need to pay $60, $70, $80, right, depending standard definition, high definition, to explain that to the fans, you're going to have to do your part. Now, the reason I'm making this updated video is because a fight that we're trying to put together would be kind of like a prelude fight, which was Gabe Rosado, who has a name, training with Fernando Vargas, right? And that's versus Billy Joe Saunders. That fight fell apart, and it doesn't look like they'll see eye to eye. Maybe something last minute will change, but at the moment, it doesn't look like they can agree. Frank Warren, Billy Joe Saunders promoter, doesn't look like they're seeing eye to eye, and they've been deliberating and negotiating for weeks now, right? And I know some people in the Rosado camp, and they were really trying to push it, so I think it's more on the Frank Warren side, to be honest, because I think Gabe Rosado wanted that particular fight. Now, I watched Gabe Rosado's last fight. He was on, I believe, Francisco Vargas, Orlando Salido. That wasn't his best performance. In fact, he got knocked down by a guy most people hadn't even heard of. A lot of people don't even know that because you don't fucking watch boxing, right? So they didn't even get to see Gabe Rosado. They only see like the televised fights, or the fights that are main events, or the ones with swirling with the big buzz. But bottom line is, Gabe Rosado, that was a fight that I was down to see. You know what I mean? Rosado versus Saunders. Is it the best middleweight fight? No, but I mean, it's at least something. It's something to potentially sell a Canelo Smith undercard. But now we're not even getting that. And most likely Billy Joe Saunders will fight in the UK, probably against a bum, someone we don't know. It's probably not going to be Eubank rematch. It's not going to be Danny Jacobs because he's fighting Sergio Mora. Golovkin's fighting Brook. So most likely it's going to be against somebody that is little known. You know what I mean? His last fight that he pulled out of was against Max Bursak or something like that. So it's probably going to be someone like that, or maybe even Max Bursak or whatever the guy's name was, right? That is not where the problem stops, because another fight that they wanted for this particular undercard was Luis King Kong Ortiz, right? And I know some people that know some people. He was supposed to fight Alexander Ustinov, which is, if you know Ustinov, it's not a bad fight. He's ranked. It's a heavyweight fight. Clearly, Wilder's recovering from surgery. He got hurt in his areola fight, so it's not like King Kong could fight a lot of guys. Tyson Fury's fighting Klitschko in a rematch. Anthony Joshua, they're talking about Huey Fury, but maybe next year. Bermane Stiverne, so we don't know. And I doubt they want to put AJ in with King Kong right away when he's like a newer champion. They probably want him to develop and stuff. So bottom line, the Ustinov fight is not the biggest fight, but if you know the rankings and you know the heavyweight division, it wasn't a bad fight. I mean, of course I would favor King Kong to win, but the thing is this, that fight fell apart, and now King Kong is trying to get out of his contract with Golden Boy for whatever reason. I don't know what his plans are, him and his team, but they're trying to get out of that. So at the moment, the card is looking real stale, which is a real problem because this was already a hard sell with Canelo, Liam Smith. I told you myself, I cover boxing, don't know much about Liam Smith. In fact, when it was first announced, I didn't even know he was related to Paul Smith, and I covered Andre Ward versus Paul Smith. You know what I mean? He might have even been there, but I just didn't know who I was looking for, right? So, to be honest, I don't know enough about Liam Smith to think this would do any kind of great numbers. Other problem is, for whatever reason, I think Golden Boy is trying to target the Mexican Hispanic population in Texas. Not a problem. Canelo's a Mexican superstar, but those are big shoes to fill when you don't have a thorough card, right? Because even you look at Canelo versus Khan, right? That undercard had some pretty good fights. You had undefeated Golden Boy prospect Patrick Teixeira versus Curtis Stevens, a known puncher, and Curtis Stevens pulled off the upset. I don't know the actual odds, but maybe it was considered an upset. You had David Lemieux versus Glenn Tapia, which on paper seemed like it could be a war, even though it was very one-sided, right? You had Mauricio Herrera, Frankie Gomez. So it was pretty built. It was pretty put together. So the undercard, it wasn't the greatest undercard ever made, but it was definitely solid with enough key names. But you're not really getting that with Canelo versus Liam Smith. Not only is Liam Smith a UK star lesser known than Amir Khan, the undercard doesn't at the moment seem to be up to par, especially when I'm a fan first and foremost. Before I ever started reporting and covering fights and doing interviews and stuff like that, I was a fan. This all started off more so as a hobby, just out of respect and the passion for the sport, and that's what still drives me. But obviously the brand has grown since I started, and you got to explain, like, Lucy, you got some explaining to do. Like, you got some explaining to do why I would pay, or why I need to pay $70 to $80. And to me, Golden Boy has not yet provided an answer. Maybe they'll come up with the fight out of the woodworks, but for now, no Luis King Kong Ortiz, no Billy Joe Saunders versus Gabe Rosado, right? And you haven't told me who's going to be on it. Mauricio Herrera looked bad in his last fight. Lucas Matisse is talking about he wants to retire, and he got stopped by Postal. So we don't even know if he's coming back to the sport. So I don't really want to bank on him. I like Lucas Matisse, watching him as a fighter, but I don't even know if he has the passion to fight anymore. You look at David Lemieux, who's doing his own thing and supposed to fight in Canada October 22nd, possibly against Curtis Stevens. Made an Ego Rumor Mill video about that, so it's not like Lemieux's going to be back on the card. Glenn Tapia, I heard he signed to Golden Boy, but I mean, he just got knocked out in his last fight by David Lemieux. So, I mean, who couldn't Glenn Tapia fight? Kirkland already knocked him out, Michelle Soro, and then now David Lemieux. So, I mean, what big fight is there for that? So, to me, it's just not looking good. When you look at the Golden Boy stable, you try to play matchmaker in your head, and on top of this, the biggest crutch is what PBC's doing, because again, the pay-per-views, people will probably still pay, but you got to make it worth their while. They got to understand why they're paying. Like, you got to do your best to try to, like, even Mayweather versus Berto, if you look at that undercard, you see how I just know these cards on the top of my head and stuff? But you look at Mayweather Berto, they at least put like Rocky Martinez, Orlando Salido on there. Robert Guerrero, when he fought Mayweather, some people were probably like, oh, this isn't the greatest fight, whatever. But they put Abner Matas and Ponce de Leon. To me, that's good business. It was a Mexican holiday weekend. You put Abner Matas moving up versus Daniel Ponce de Leon at that time. You put Rocky Martinez, Orlando Salido in the mix, who already had a war and had a second war, and I thought Salido won the second fight. But I just haven't heard an answer from Golden Boy. And the Canelo Smith and Liam Smith fight. See, this is the thing. This is the problem. I think the promoters like Oscar De La Hoya, they've been in the game so long. Bob Arum, all these guys, they've been in the game so long, they're used to the old way. You know what I mean? The old way, like even with Top Rank, they're doing the Jesse Vargas. I don't even know what networks that's going to be on. But they're used to the old way. Like back in the day, like before the emergence of YouTube and stuff, fans had to get pay-per-view. That was like really no other choice to get good quality and watch the fight in real time and stuff like that, right? Without watching a VHS recorded tape later on or something like that. And you could put Pacquiao in there with David Diaz or whoever. I don't know if that was a pay-per-view fight, but just for example, Pacquiao was such a star. You could put him in there with David Diaz and it would still do numbers. You could put him in there with Josh Clottey and the people weren't necessarily watching it for Clottey. You know what I mean? Real boxing heads knew Clottey should have had a better performance, but the point being is Pacquiao versus anybody would do decently. You know what I mean? It'd at least do decent numbers. And then the better the competition, if it was a name like Miguel Cotto or a guy Antonio Margarito or Hatton, then of course those numbers would be even better. But now the problem is they're thinking everybody's such an A-side. Like Canelo, he's such an A-side. We could just put him in there with Joe Blow. We could put him in there with Leo Schreiber from 24/7, and that's going to do numbers. It doesn't work like that no more. The game is different. The game is much different, and that's the thing. Like, you'll start seeing improvements. The way I look at things is if you don't improve, you become extinct like dinosaurs. If you don't improve and evolve with the times, that's what it is. So you'll start seeing more and more things like utilizing today's technology on my YouTube channel, like live streaming and just different ways to interact and just different. I'm always going to try to push the envelope because I'm trying to grow the brand and stay on top of it. But you can't continue having the old way of thinking when things are different. People have the Amazon Fire Sticks now. You know what I mean? People have ways to stream from their phones or be updated, and they don't have to necessarily watch stuff. So to me, you gotta since you're competing with free TV and some damn good fights, plus just where the market's at, I think you have to take that in consideration. And if you're putting things on pay-per-view, you got to make it worth people's while. Like, for example, here's a perfect example. If Canelo was fighting David Lemieux, I think you could get away with it. Is that the very best middleweight fight? No, because people would probably say the guy that beat David Lemieux, Triple G, would be a better fight for Canelo, right? And a bigger fight. But it would still be enough clash of styles, enough danger for Canelo, enough danger for David Lemieux, where people would tune the fuck in. I know I would, because I think it's a good fight. David Lemieux not necessarily the most technically proficient, however, he can crack. So that's the type of fight where if they were to do something like that, you wouldn't hear any kind of criticism or complaint. I'd be like, all right, that's cool. You know what I mean? He's preparing for Golovkin. David Lemieux is solid. He wants to acclimate to the weight. And then whatever they put on the undercard would be like, all right, cool. You know what I'm saying? Because the main event is interesting and intriguing enough. But right now, as it sits, the only people that I know that are on the undercard, and I don't even know who they're fighting, is Joseph Diaz Jr. And I've seen him live, but he's not a big enough name. You know what I mean? Actually, his HBO debut was the fight that I covered in March. That was his very first HBO televised fight, and it was on the co-main event of Ward versus Sullivan Barrera, right? So good little fighter, but not known like in the grand scheme of things. And then also Jason Quigley. And I know if y'all don't know who Joseph Diaz Jr. is, you damn sure not gonna know who Jason Quigley is. Quigley Down Under. So that's the thing. It's just not enough star power for this particular card to sell 80 to 90,000 seats and have a successful pay-per-view. But we'll see. Like I said, maybe Golden Boy, they've made some calls or placed other offers. But from what I've seen, this undercard is not looking good. And I don't know. Like if Joseph Diaz, I forgot exactly. I think he's fighting in the same weight as Lee Selby, Gary Russell. If they could put something together like that, like Gary Russell versus Joseph Diaz Jr. or Lee Selby or someone right around there, then those would of course be good fights. Maybe even like a Tevin Farm. I don't know. I don't know who they could get at this level. You know what I mean? Like I doubt they can get like a Tank or somebody right now. So we'll see. I'm not going to speculate on what they can and can't do. We'll see when it's all written, when it's all said and done. But based on the fights that have fell out and the only fights that have actually been announced, and actually not even fights, just fighters, and that's Jason Quigley and Joseph Diaz Jr. It's just not enough star power to make me more interested in ordering this card, and that's just 100% real. Canelo, Liam Smith, maybe it'll turn out to be a solid fight. You know what I mean? But it's not the fight that fans requested. Let me know what you guys think. Drop it in the comment section. Make sure you like my video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.